Hello guitar people! Today I am gonna do some fretwork and some fretboard work on this this neck that I just built for a custom order for a GRT model. This neck is a nice piece of roasted bird's eye maple that I got from a supplier in Canada. He delivered some really nice wood, and it has a rosewood fretboard, as you can see, that have been masked off. And the first thing that I'm going to do is remove the tape, but it has finish, of course, on the side, but also a bit on the tape as well. So when I peel it off, I have to be very careful that I don't get chips down the edges here. And a trick to avoid that is basically to take some 220 sandpaper and just sand slightly on the edge. I don't want to round the edge for now, I'll do that later, but simply just sand some of the finish away, so when I peel off the tape it will have a breaking point along the edges. When I peel off the masking tape, it's important that I do that in the right direction. This one is in the middle, that's not really important, but when I come down here at the end, I don't want to tear it out this way. I'll simply just stay inside the fretboard like this to avoid the chipping. And that goes as well for the other pieces. Like this. So pull it basically towards you to the center of the fretboard. If I wanted to do it like this way, I could end up chipping. Now we don't want to have that. Pain in the ass to repair. Very carefully. I think we succeeded without any chipping of the lacquer at the edge. So here we go. The fretboard has been sanded in a 12-inch radius with this aluminum sanding block, and it still has some sanding marks as this sandpaper is quite rough. I think it's about 100 or 120 grit. So before we can go on, I will need to make the surface really smooth and nice and shiny with some very fine sandpaper. And the first type of sandpaper that I'm using is a 320 grit, just to remove the big scratches. It already helps quite a lot, but there's still some more sanding to do. Next step is sanding with some Mirka 600 grit gold soft sandpaper. That's basically for dry sanding on a finish, and then you can polish it after, but it works quite well on the rosewood fretboard as well. It makes some very fine dust, so you need to clean the fretboard quite frequently when you do this, otherwise you will just squeeze around in this very fine dust and do no sanding at all. And already now some of the scratches can be seen again, and I have to go back to the 320 to remove these scratches. There are some here and some here, so back to the rough ones. The fretboard have been sanded with 600 grit now, and it's really smooth and very nice to touch. But I prefer to give it 1000 grit on top of that to even make it even more smooth and remove some of the scratches from the 600 paper. And again, dust have to be blown away. The surface on the fretboard is now really smooth and almost have a little shine, but I prefer to go even one step further and take it to my buffing machine and have some buffing compound for hardwood like rosewood, etc. And it gives a really nice finish when I do that. Looks really nice now. It looks really beautiful now. You can see the grain is really popping up. Of course, the excess buffing compound have to be removed as it's a bit greasy, but it's quite easy. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it's really shiny now. And it gives a really smooth and comfortable playing comfort. The fretboard is almost ready to have the frets installed. But before I do that, I want to do one last thing. I have this little triangle file, and I prefer to do this for the future because I will make a small bevel on the edge of the fret slot, because when it has to be refretted in many years, you can pull the fret up without having too many chips to repair, because that's really a pain in the ass to do that. So just a slight bevel on the edge of the slot, just like this. That's enough. Really simple but very efficient. And then another thing, the fretboard I make for my guitars are made on a CNC machine, and that means the slot are not going all the way through, so we don't have the fret ends sticking out except for the fret, but the tang will not stick out. I think it looks way better, and it's so much easier. Also, when you have to refret it, you don't have to have the chip in the lacquer at the edge of the fretboard. But of course, all the frets have to be cut and adapted so it fits down in the slot. It's a little extra work, but I think it's definitely worth the effort. The fretboard is basically ready for frets now. I've chosen the medium high from StewMac, one of my favorites. Goes to a lot of different guitars. It works really well. It's nice to work with, and it's a quite solid quality, I believe. So let's bend some frets. I have my little fret bender here, very handy tool. The neck is a 12-inch radius, and I will slightly overbend it in order to get a tight fit on the fretboard. Easy peasy, very easy. I have my extremely special high-tech tool to keep track of the frets while I'm cutting the length to different frets. like this, and it's basically super simple. It's just lay down, measure, and cut. And here we go. All threads are now cut in the correct length, and next step is to remove a bit of the tang in order to fit in the slot, as the slot are not open in both sides. It appears like a kind of binding, which is not, but we will have to dress the threads the same way as a binding. And to that I have a little special tool here, very handy, like this. Don't know if you can see it, but it needs to be removed in both ends, and here we go. One down, 21 to go. I'm now ready to install the threads. I have some of my lovely super glue, and my arbor press is set up with a tool that has the exact radius 12" as the fretboard has. That way we get an even pressure all over the fret and can avoid any humps and bumps, and not necessary to bang it in with a hammer. I actually used to do that, but it's so much easier with this tool here. The threads are ready over here, so and I have some acetone ready. If I spill a drop of super glue and I get some squeeze out, it has to be removed with acetone right away. First I take like 5 slots at a time and squeeze a little glue in. It doesn't take much, as there are not much space. Have to be very careful not to get this stuff all over the place. The bottom of the slot has the same radius as the fretboard, so the glue will squeeze out and fill all over the bottom. So let's tap in some thread for a start. Here we go. Looks very nice. Completely flush with the surface of the fretboard. All threads are pressed in the slots, and each thread are checked for tightness to make sure that it's completely mounted correct. And now it's just to cut off the excess end. Next step is to file the thread ends flush to the fretboard with a plain file. And this. And when the thread ends are basically flush, I use this file which gives the thread ends a bevel on about 35 degrees. The threads are now file flush, and it has a nice bevel to the edge of the fretboard, but it still have a kind of burr on the edge of the thread here, and it needs to be addressed as well. I have this small special file, so a couple of strokes like this will remove the burr that the file has caused, and then it's really soft and sweet and nice to touch. And that goes for, of course, for all the threads. The fretboard have been masked with masking tape, because now I'm gonna do some fret planning. It's quite easy to see where you get, because if you use a marker like this, a blue one, and give each thread a line, you can see where my tool have kissed the thread on top. I actually have checked for high spots, and I found a couple, but no big deal. Very little, a fraction of a millimeter maybe, but enough to take care of it. But I'm always planning threads no matter what, just to make 100% sure that everything is straight and the same height. For planning, I'm using this block. It's a steel block that have been milled to perfection, flat surface on both sides, and I use double sticky tape like this, and then I have some 600 grit sandpaper for metal. I don't know what's that called in English, but it works quite well. And then it's just do some clean, nice stroke. You can already see it's basically kissing, touching all threads at the same time. A little bit in an area here, but really not much. I have now touched all threads with my sanding block. A couple of places needs a little crowning, but not much. And then it's just polishing the threads so it can be really nice and smooth. The thread has become some scratches from my sanding block, and I basically remove these with some steel wool, some 000 I think it is, and it gets them to a pretty decent shine. Simply just by doing this. I use a little thread protector so I don't scratch through the masking tape and into the fretboard surface. It's beginning to... The threads are okay shiny now, but I would like to take it one step further and give it a spin on my buffing wheel with some metal polishing compound. A little cleaning is of course necessary, so we have this compound all over, but it's quite easy, not that big an issue. But the threads are getting really shiny and smooth. Well, let's see how it looks without the masking tape. I'm basically done now with the fretwork. It has some nice smooth edges and shines really lovely. I think it's turned out pretty well. There's not much left to do. I have some tuners from Schala, like this. I think they make some of the best hardware for guitars in the world. And let's see what we have here. Beautiful tuners, just like this. Locking tuners, staggered of course. So a little bit of mounting is all that's needed, and then it's ready for the body. I'm not done with the neck. It's basically ready for attachment to the body, and I think it turned out pretty okay. So just one little thing here. Here we go. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, just pop a comment below. See you.